So this video is basically I'm gonna just read this document for you guys because I'm kind of worried about the language being challenging. So I just want to make it a little easier on you guys. And might be a few things I want to point out along the way. Basically, this reading is an overview of the Mexican Revolution. I'm going to just put it in there and see if people use it or not. I think if you use it, it'll be helpful. But if you don't, it'll be tougher. Okay. So basically, your task with this is to retell the reading by writing three summary sentences, starting with first and then finally. You see, it's basically a 3-page reading. So I would say read a page, do a sentence, read a page, do a sentence, read a page, do a sentence. All right, a couple things I want to point out here visually. Here you have a child fighting. Notice he's got a sombrero and he's got a bandolier of bullets about his torso. Often, women fighting in the Mexican Revolution isn't mentioned, but that's why photos like this are important. See, the ladies have guns. They were warriors too. Support Porfirio Diaz. He's going to be a lightning rod to really inspire the Second Mexican Revolution. This is Francisco Madero. This is Emiliano Zapata. When we get to the end, I'll show you some other pictures. All right. I'm going to go ahead and read this first part, and we'll see how long it takes us. Mexican Revolution overview. This is written by a woman named Lynn Davies. Throughout its history, Mexico's had many revolutions. The most famous, perhaps, is the Mexican Revolution from 1910 to 1920. The people of Mexico were getting tired of the dictatorial rule of President Porfirio Diaz. People of all classes were fighting in the revolution. The middle and upper classes were dissatisfied with the president's ways. The lower and working class people had many factors such as poor working conditions, inflation, inferior housing, low wages, and deficient social services. Within the classes, everyone was fighting, men, women, and children. All contributed to the fight for freedom from Diaz. This revolution proved to be the rise and fall of many leaders. In the beginning of his reign, Diaz was almost ideal and had great intentions for Mexico. He created a more stable government and got rid of crime. Quality of life was improved. The government was made stronger by dispatching governors to the various areas of Mexico. The army was also made stronger by professionalizing it. The police force readily enforced Diaz's laws. Diaz also relied on a group of aristocrats as advisors. As Mexico grew structurally and economically, foreign firms invested in the area. The money from the firms helped Diaz to build highways, railroads, telegraph lines, oil fields, and rejuvenate the mining industry. New industries were also created, and in 50 years, Mexico had transformed itself from a third world country to the ideal model of a developing country. Though these things helped to build up Mexico, they were also the factors in the destruction of Diaz. The people in power became wealthy, but the rest of the population remained impoverished. That means poor. Both the rich and the poor no longer wanted the dependence on foreign investments. More importantly, though, was the new generation of Mexicans were full of ambition to be in politics. The Diaz regime had such control over the government, though, that no one was able to break into the system. This made the ambitious generation want to break in even more. Okay, go ahead and go to the end of the document and write your first sentence, pausing this video, and then unpause when you're done, and you'll hear me continuing the reading. An interview given by Diaz in 1908 was read by Francisco I. Madero. He was inspired to gather supporters to defeat Diaz in the 1910 election. In the interview, Diaz said that he thought Mexico could handle free elections by 1910. Madero was a strong believer in democracy and realized that Diaz had a monopoly with the government. Madero thought that Diaz could step down from office. By the time 1910 came around, Madero had inspired many citizens and a quiet group of followers. I think he wrote a book, Madero did. His chances for election were very good, and Diaz got scared. Right before the elections in 1910, Diaz falsely accused Madero and had him thrown in jail. Diaz is once again elected as president. Madero was soon released, and learning of Diaz's re-election, he fled to Texas because, remember what happened to Charles I in United Kingdom? Lost his head. Usually when leaders lose, their lives are at risk. While there, he stated that the elections were illegitimate and that he was president pro temp until new elections could be held. He also wrote a document which called for a revolt on November 20th, 1910. See, that's why they had the date. Makes sense. Which marks the start of the Mexican Revolution. There were three very strong revolutionary groups throughout the revolution that contributed to the rise and fall of the leaders. These were led by Emiliano Zapata, Francisco Pancho Villa, and Pascual Orozco. Zapata was from the south, and his troops covered that area, while Villa and Orozco were from the north, covering those areas. In 1911, Orozco and Villa began taking control of cities in the northern areas, while Zapata took control of Cuautla and cut off the road to Mexico City. Orozco and Villa captured Ciudad Juarez. These events combined convinced Diaz to resign and forced him to flee to Europe, flees to leave in a hurry. Though he fled, I think he actually went to Spain and he lived his life out there. Diaz left a large army under the command of General Victoriano Huerta and a provisional president. Soon after he left, Zapata rode into Mexico City, where he met up with Madero. Madero was then declared president because he had Zapata's support and Villa and Orozco as well. Madero's presidency was short-lived, though. Madero's agenda was to please everyone, which meant no action was taking place. He turned Zapata against him by failing to act, and the inaction convinced Villa and Orozco to also abandon him. Huerta at this time met with a U.S. ambassador to come up with a plan. The U.S. felt that Madero was too closely related to the revolutionaries and did not support him. Huerta and the ambassador, along with the help of Diaz's nephew, Felix Diaz, came up with a plan to overthrow Madero and install Huerta as president. Huerta revolted against Madero, and Madero, Vice President Suarez, and General Angeles were arrested. On February 22nd, 1913, Madero and Suarez were killed for allegedly trying to escape. See what happens? See why he left the first time? Huerta was now the president, and revolutionary violence exploded. Huerta was hated by almost everyone because they thought of him as trying to be a modern day Diaz. By the way, they called Diaz's reign Porfiriato, and that will come up again later. Just a little spoiler there. And three revolutionary forces rise in the north. These are led by Villa, Alvaro Obregon, and Venustiano Carranza. In the south, Zapata was still fighting. Throughout 1913 and 1914, Huerta suffered one defeat after another. In the summer of 1914, all four revolutionary forces came together in Mexico City to defeat Huerta. Huerta, realizing that he was beat, fled from the city. In August of 1914, Carranza declared himself president. Okay, so go ahead and write your second note in summary, starting with the word then. Pause while you do so. Unpause when you're done. I'm going to keep going. Soon after Carranza declared himself president, Villa began fighting against him. Villa built up his forces and started moving south to push Carranza out of Mexico. Carranza fought back, but Zapata shot them all by taking Mexico City. The fighting went on until Villa, Zapata, and Obregon met to come up with a solution. They decided to put Eulalia Gutierrez as president, and Zapata agreed to move out of Mexico City. This worked for a while, but the different revolutionary forces soon made alliances. Villa and Zapata stayed loyal to each other and to Gutierrez as president. Obregon and Carranza came together and worked to get Carranza back into the presidency. In 1915, Villa's and Obregon's forces came together in a battle where Obregon was victorious. Because of Villa's forces being badly wounded, Carranza was able to reclaim the presidency. After Carranza took the presidency, Villa's forces fought Carranza for a period of time. Villa, Zapata, and Obregon once again met up to come up with a solution. Again, they named Gutierrez as president, and he was backed by Villa and Zapata. Once again, though, Obregon united with Carranza, and in late 1915, Zapata and Villa suffered incredible losses at the hands of Obregon and Carranza. Carranza's power began to rise, and Zapata badly needed extra troops to fight back. In April of 1919, one of Carranza's generals said he was defecting from Carranza and wished to speak to Zapata to join him in the fight. So Zapata went to meet with the general, and only after he got there did he realize that it was a trap. Zapata was shot and killed shortly after he arrived at the meeting. The news of Zapata's death traveled quickly, and Carranza became a hated man. He lost all his supporters, including Obregon. Realizing that he was doomed, Carranza tried to flee the country, leave just like other ones, but he's killed just outside of Mexico City. Sound familiar? Adolfo de la Huerta was put in as president until elections could be held. As at elections, Obregon won, most of the revolutionary violence ceased. During this time, there were some people who did not want to fight. They did not want any part of the revolution, so they fled to the United States. Some of the factors that made people leave were economic disaster, chaos, danger, and social disorganization. Almost 900,000 Mexican immigrants came to the United States between 1910 and 1920. Besides escaping the violence of the revolution, Mexican people came to the U.S. because they saw it as an opportunity for work. At first, the U.S. was not sure if they wanted all these people migrating into the states. They soon decided to take a closer look. They went down into Mexico and saw what all the violence had done. They felt that they could not refuse Mexican immigrants wanting to have a better lifestyle. Everyone in Mexico was affected by the Mexican Revolution. They were fighting for their freedom or wanted to escape the chaos. They were affected by the rise and fall of power. It also affected some people in the United States as Mexican immigrants came into the U.S. People fought for their freedom, and after many years of fighting, were able to achieve that. Go ahead and write your last sentence of summary, and let me point out some other people that were mentioned. This is Francisco Pancho Villa. Typically, you'll see him dressed more as a cowboy and have this bowler kind of hat. They'll have a bandolero of bullets, be on a horse, and have a rifle. This is Pascual Orozco. This is Alvaro Obregon. This is Venustiano Carranza, the Creole. Victoriano Huerta. He ends up being hated because of his role in the assassination of Zapata. All right. So it looks like that took about 12 minutes to read, and maybe a couple more. So I think that should be doable in 15 minutes. So this should be completed on Tuesday. Hopefully this all makes sense. Please send me a message if you have questions. I know it was complicated though. So as long as you got the general idea or understand a thing or two on each page, I think that's plenty. Okay? Again, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.